Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and dopamine. Ta-da! Hello, I'm Jess.
And I'm Bree.
And this is Dungeons and Dopamine. Episode 16. What? I'm so much more sure about that than my name. I realized as I was saying it that I was doing it out of order.
You're like, what do I do? What do I do? Freeze.
I couldn't recover. And now I'm crying.
This is gonna be great.
This is already starting off on the right foot.
Best episode ever. Award winning.
This is the one everyone's going to want to sponsor. I do have a Reese's Fast Break that I'm going to enjoy at some point. That'll probably have to cut it out when I open the Reese's Fast Break because it will go. But Reese's, if you need someone to, hang out, talk to, sponsor, we're here.
Yeah. Or
this is the episode, obviously.
Or Haribo.
Yeah.
With the gummy bears. I am a big supporter.
We even have them in a video.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey guys, we're here. I'm sure they're listening.
Duh.
Please follow us on Spotify.
That would be really helpful. Thanks.
and follow us on, or find us on Patreon and support us.
Have you ever read the Reddit threads where they're like, hey, people that won a contest where you got a lifetime supply of something, how did it go? And it's always like, yeah, I won a lifetime supply of Skittles once, and now I hate Skittles.
Or I won a lifetime supply of WD-40, and they just sent me 3 cases of WD-40 or something like that.
Or a whole pallet of cookies, and they all would have went bad before we could eat them, so I had to give them out to all the neighbors.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd still be pretty stoked that I won a lifetime supply of something.
True.
Unless it was useless. I want a lifetime supply of kittens.
How many kittens do you think that works out to be?
I mean, look.
Do they send you one kitten every year? Do they send you one kitten every 13 years?
So I want a kitten every 2 months, just because I want them as
perpetual
fun, sweet kittens, and then they can go.
Yeah, right.
Which is totally a lie. After the first 2, I'd be like, you can't take any more of my kittens.
I love these babies.
And then suddenly I'm like the cat lady.
Mm-hmm.
Morally, this is probably a terrible option.
Where did your life go wrong, Jessica?
It's
when I won a lifetime supply of kittens. Best prize ever.
I'll never recover. Sorry, I was just checking.
I'm never going to financially recover from this.
So, recently, this is absolutely complete opposite topic from what we're talking about. Recently on TikTok, all I ever do is apparently go on TikTok because that's all I ever talk about on this podcast. So.
Well, good, because then what else would we talk about?
That's right.
It can't come from me.
You know a lot about wells today.
It's true. It's true. I could tell you a lot about pressure tanks.
Don't.
And also certificates of trust. I dealt with a lot of those today, too.
So, before we get stuck on that, I mean, really interesting
Before Bree ruins the podcast.
Have you noticed that a lot of people have been doing that thing, usually it's girls, and usually they're younger, in their late teens, early 20s, and they do, seeing a guy with a frappuccino is the biggest ick.
Oh, that's the word we're using now, right? Ick.
No,
He gives me the ick.
I don't like it.
Fair.
Ick gives me the ick. In fact, I almost asked you a couple weeks ago. I was thinking maybe we should do an icks episode, and then I was like, I can't say that all episode.
Mm-mm.
The word just does something to me, and it's
Yucky's way better.
Yucky, or I find it very
Gross.
unattractive when a man, which I also think is really stupid. Drink whatever the heck you want.
Right.
If you like a frappuccino, have that. If you have a black coffee and you're sipping it and cringing, I think you're way weirder than if you're carrying a frappuccino and happy.
Right.
Because also, in fact, I too like Frappuccino.
And black coffee is disgusting.
Icky. Which doesn't...
Black coffee gives me the ick.
Ew. But yes, I have a really hard time with it. And there's a lot of things that are normal for people to do. Like, when a man... Oh, I wish I would have written some of these down. But they're really stupid. Like, when a man wears a white t-shirt. Or, like, stupid things. What are they supposed to wear? A 3-piece suit?
Every day.
Tuxedo mask is the only man this woman loves. But what if he drinks a Frappuccino?
Ruins it.
God forbid.
She has to just cut him off. That's a dumb trend.
It's so dumb. And it's
just
really
let
offensive.
just let me yuck other people's yums.
Exactly.
And talk crap about people behind,
Yes.
like, why?
And it's, I mean, fine, whatever. If you want a dude that doesn't drink Frappuccino and wears 3-piece suits all the time, you enjoy your 3-piece suit, unhappy, uncaffeinated man. But leave the other dudes alone.
And it, gosh, why so, like, my icks would be, like, political flags.
Honestly. Or
Now, I won't even, it doesn't even have to be a particular, I don't care who it is.
just
like,
a flag.
Until
Especially if
recently,
it has the
nobody
F
in the
word
United
on it.
States, nobody in the United States loved presidential candidates the way we do all of a sudden.
Nor did they put curse words
Yeah.
on their flags or bumper
yeah.
stickers that were political. Well, and the other thing that bugs me about it is that these are, like, your traditionally very beautiful girls.
Oh, of course.
Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a huge array of beauty, especially nowadays. We're starting to finally come around to accepting some of the things that were yucked.
Yeah.
In
Some
the
of
90s
the
and
icks
stuff.
from the 90s.
In fact, we have an episode coming up where we talk about
Yeah.
that. But these are very traditionally very beautiful young women. And that is, and I know it's not the same for young men seeing a young woman say that, but it is like seeing a young man who is good looking talking to your daughter about how he doesn't like whatever it is that she's doing.
Right.
It's just nasty. Come on. Like,
Just be nice to people.
yes.
Why do we have to use social media to be rude to other people?
Yes, it just drives me crazy. But I just really wanted to know what you thought about the word ick. Because
yeah.
it icks me out.
Not a fan. I don't know where I started seeing that. Maybe I was on TikTok or a reel or something, and it was like, oh, what's your ick or my ick? Oh, yeah. Gross.
No, but this
I'm
word
over it.
is it. This is my ick. I'm about to start talking. Why am I opening this website?
Jessica's going to try a new thing today.
At the end, you're going to be like, I have a new ick. It's when you spit that candy bar on your microphone, and it was gross.
These are our mumble episodes where we have to do the whole episode with our
It's
mouth
like
full.
mumble rap, but mumble podcasting. Oh my gosh.
We're gonna start a whole new trend of
Reese's,
podcasting.
you truly are gonna want to get in on this. You're gonna want to fight Hurry Bro for this.
On the subject of chocolate and gummy bears, do you remember, I know you do, Marble Slab Creamery?
Oh yes, absolutely.
And how I used to be able to get gummy bears put into my ice cream?
I do.
No one does that for me
Really?
anymore.
I went into I think it was a Cold Stone when I was younger. I was working out in another city nearby. And I walked in and I watched them serve somebody, and the person that they served was tipping them, and they had to sing. And then when that person left, it was just me and like 5. So I probably had to cut a lot of that out. But Brie just tried to die while I was telling a story.
It was beautiful, you guys.
I don't remember what the story was
Still
about. now.
crying.
I'm not. You probably will this whole time. I was telling. Cold Stone.
Yes,
Yeah,
they
yeah. So I was just me and them, and I looked at the guy that was working there, and I was like, they'd finished making my ice cream, and I looked at him, and I was like, do you have to sing to me if I put a tip in this jar? And he looked really sad at me, like directly in my eyes, and shook his head yes. And now looking back, I should have put the money like on the counter and just walked out really fast.
You should have pulled out more money and like placed it in the jar, like glaring at him the whole time.
I should have done it several times.
$1. $2.
Sing louder, ice cream boy.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Dance, monkey, oh. Anyway, I'm so sorry about that.
That's from Jessica's first original album.
The podcast days. That's what it's going to be called. But yeah, I did tip them and they did sing, and it was one of the most awkward moments of my life, and I left with my face red. I don't even remember if the ice cream was great.
Maybe that's why I never went to Cold Stone.
Probably. That's the most awkward thing that's ever happened, and it was just Cold Stone Creamery dudes.
That would be awful.
You know what else is awful? The dog man. I'm kidding. I love the dog man.
He's gonna come get you now. When his 7 years are up.
Sorry, dog man. I love you.
3 more years, Jessica.
Homie. Broheim. Bro, homie.
Forgot I took my glasses off. I was like, what is wrong with my eyes?
I choked my eyes to death. Oh, we laugh at our pain.
Somebody has to.
How everyone does.
Good point.
So, something that does actually suck is construction.
True.
So, when I was coming up with my topic this week, that's between that and Disney World, those are all the things I can think about ever at all.
You're like, let me tell you how to redo your floors.
I can tell you how to install laminate like a beast. My laminate looks great.
It does look great.
So, what I did, because construction is my brain right now, so I Googled things that have been found during construction.
Okay.
Because I was like, this has to lead us somewhere.
Yeah.
And it did. It definitely led me somewhere. Have you ever heard of the Terracotta Army?
Not besides when you told me about it 2 days ago. Or just the name. I didn't even let you tell me any information.
No, I told you nothing. I actually think I told you prepare to learn about the Terracotta Army. Are you prepared?
Let me get my notebook. Gotta take notes.
This could end up being a two-time topic. Sure, that's great alliteration.
Yeah. Yep.
Now I'll just say it with confidence. A 2-time topic.
Woo!
But I'm not sure. So bear with me. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of names that I probably am not saying correctly.
Are they German?
They're Chinese.
Oh, even better.
Yup. And like old Chinese. Okay. So here we go. Mm-hmm. Please don't hate me.
She's trying her best.
I'm trying my best. I'm really trying here, guys. So the Terracotta Army is a collection of soldiers made out of terracotta that depict the armies of Qi Shi Huang, the very first emperor of China, and was buried with this first emperor in 210 to 209 BCE. This is pretty old.
Yeah.
They were actually discovered in 1974, which is not that long ago, by some local farmers in Lintong, outside of Xi'an. Xi'an, is that correct?
Sure.
Sure.
That sounds like a place.
All right, cool.
I've
It's
heard
probably like Qian or something.
Probably.
A horrible person.
I feel
I'm
like
so sorry.
Ryan would really be the expert on most of
He will
these.
correct me when I am
when he's listening
editing
to it.
this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask him specifically because I knew it was going to take longer than it was worth.
I understand.
I love you. So they were found by these farmers, and also while these, like, just during the past, between 200 and 1974.
It's like very little time. No problem.
Just a second. They would find, when they worked in this area, they would find little chunks of terracotta. And they would, like, write it down in their logs and move along. And that was it. Okay, so the farmers found it while they were digging a well, which, yes. But it turned out that they were just digging up literal tomb. But not like just... I'm not doing this justice. It's not like just a tomb. It's not just like a grave site or like the little mausoleums that you find in graveyards and stuff now. This is a huge tomb. They figure it's approximately 98 square kilometers, which is 38 square miles.
Holy cow.
So it's a big...
That's like the size of a township.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah. I was really hoping you would have something to compare it to, honestly, because I figured it was around there and thought Maybe she'll pull out one of those facts for
Townships are usually 36 square miles. Or 30, yeah.
And the Terracotta Army is buried to the east of a larger tomb area. They call it a necropolis.
Ooh.
So that's a fun word. And there are 3 sections of the Terracotta Army. I did get most of this information literally just from Wiki, because there's so much information out there that I had to stick to one site, or it was getting...
Could have been days.
Absolutely. I had mentioned that the farmers were finding terracotta, not just those farmers, but in general, when they were in that land, they were finding pieces of terracotta, and they were just tossing them as worthless, so we have lost some of them.
That's sad.
Yeah, really a bummer. But the tomb of the emperor himself seems to be hermetically sealed. It's a space that's approximately 100... let's do this in feet. Let's be American. 328 feet by 246 feet. So, I mean, it's a small room, but really the size of like a bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really a good-sized tomb, unless the emperor's really big.
Right.
The tomb has not been opened, even though, you know, we have resources and things like that now, because they're worried about preservation. The area that this is in, when something gets excavated, paint and the lacquer, the precious stones, the paint will just within 15 minutes it dries off and curls and flakes off of which is what happened to a lot of the Terracotta Army. So anyway, back to the pits. They were found in 3 different pits. There are 4 pits total, but one of them was just empty. Just kind of weird. We don't know if there were intentions to have more and something happened and they couldn't finish them or what. The pits are about 23 feet deep and are all currently uncovered. They are almost about a mile from the burial mound, which is where the tomb is in the necropolis. And the soldiers were laid out as if they were a true army standing there to protect the emperor. One of the main theories is that the emperor had them built because he wanted them to protect him in the afterlife. He wanted to bring an army to the afterlife. So pit 1 is 750 feet long and 203 feet wide. And it contains the main army of more than 3,000 figures. It is the largest of the 4 pits, and it has 11 parallel corridors that are about 10 feet wide and paved with small bricks. And then there are wooden ceilings that are supported by wooden beams and posts, which is just, I mean, that's just wild. So pit 2 has a cavalry and the infantry units, as well as war chariots, and is thought to represent a military guard. Pit 3 is a command post with high-ranking officers and war chariot. And pit 4 is empty. So...
which is weird.
It's very strange. And what were they going to put there? I mean, What is the next progression? You'd think that it would be the emperor. So maybe they were going to put his likeness or his riches or maybe his main men, so to speak.
That could be.
And they ran out of time.
His generals and...
Yeah. Something, some of his high-ups or maybe his family. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of the figures in pits 1 and 2 have some fire damage, and some burnt ceilings have been found. Then they found fire.
Then the elves showed up.
That is no
with fire.
And explosives, and they took down the wall that's never been taken down before. And then they won Helm's Deep.
That's 100%.
Oh,
that's how I remember the story.
So bad. They've taken the fire evidence, and several of the military figures have missing weapons, and they figure that these are probably looting at some point.
Okay, yeah.
So unfortunately, it's...
people suck.
Yeah, and I mean, we didn't find it they didn't find it as a human race. We didn't find it again until the 70s. So probably a long time ago. I'm sure they weren't thinking, they might find these someday when there's hippies.
These are going to be part of history.
They have been putting together a lot of these terracotta figures with some of the fragments, and they have found a few that have been in decent shape. About the figures themselves, they are life-sized. They're ranging from about 5'7" to about 6'6", which is huge, honestly, especially back then. Well, maybe we had a period of shortness, and then we got tall again. The crazy thing is, this is one of the things that really blew my mind. There are over 8,000 soldiers. There are 130 chariots with 520 horses, 150 cavalry horses, and some other pits containing acrobats, musicians, strongmen, ducks.
What?
Yeah.
Just all made out of terracotta.
Yeah. So I tell you that because these next facts about them are mind-blowing when you consider this. Every single figure has a different face.
Nuh-uh.
They have individual features. And so are their clothing and their weapons and stuff. They're all wearing their armor. I mean, their armor is in a general way all similar.
As it should match.
But they have some differences and little details and stuff in them.
That's incredible.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
Mind-blowing. I can't imagine how long it took them to do this.
Right.
Sorry. Oh, they do also have, I'll just read this straight off. They vary in height, uniform, and hairstyle in accordance with their portrayed rank. Their faces appear to be different for each individual figure. The scholars who've been studying these did find that there are 10 base facial structures.
Okay.
So maybe it came from a mold, and then a person would take them and add their own detailing. Mm-hmm. Maybe let me add some facial hair. This guy looks like he'd be missing a tooth.
Right.
This
guy's nose is bigger.
Yeah. So that's mind-blowing. That's 8,000. I can't even imagine how many
I wouldn't be able to do that for
not
7.
Exactly. All of mine would look like... Okay, all of mine would have a line for an eye and a line for an eye and a smile.
Just like the old school smiley face.
They might have like a little C-shaped nose, but probably not. So I guess I really can't put my 2 cents in here. But they're amazing, and they are so detailed that you can tell, I guess the infantry, the cavalrymen, wore a pillbox hat, is what they called it at the time. So they're actually wearing those. The drivers of the chariots would be heavier armored than any others because they're, forging ahead. Uh-huh. And then they have archers and bowmen who are kneeling with crossbows in their hands. And the weapons are made of, they have metal and stuff on them to act as real weapons. It's insane. So originally these guys were painted with ground precious stones and intensely fired bones, pigments of iron oxide, cinnabar, so it makes me think of candy bar from that movie. I can't remember what movie it is. Malachite, azurite, charcoal, a mix of copper silicate and cinnabar barium, which, what?
Sure.
And tree sap and other colors that were created by other things. But they painted all of these precisely and oftentimes would give the faces like a pink hue. And then the hair would be done in black. And the eyebrows and everything. So they really...
These are intense. Somebody spent...
a lot of time.
Did he have an army to build these? Or one guy locked in a basement?
So poor Frank.
Make me soldiers so that I can be buried with them.
There was a guy. There was a scholar who wrote about some of this stuff. And kind of indicated that the emperor had 700,000 people employed to do this. But also, everyone says that that's just way too much. That's just impossible.
And is that something they would have, done back then? I don't know.
It's so hard to fathom. I mean, 700,000 people is hard to fathom in general.
In general, yeah.
But, these weren't all working on the statues. These were all building this whole necropolis, which I didn't even get to start on. And I still feel like I haven't told you guys anything. But let's wrap this up, and then I will go into more details later. And I have some of those really great theories and things to tell you guys about, too. I'll get myself in order here, and we'll go back over this again. The Terracotta Warriors, there are 8,000 of them. They were discovered in about the 1970s by some farmers. And then there were 130 chariots, 520 horses. That's just insane.
Yeah.
Made out of terracotta. We've been excavating them. Literally, I found articles from 2016 about these. I think we're still just going at it.
We're like, okay, and here's another one.
Exactly. So I'm sorry if that was a little discombobulated. Basically, the Terracotta Army is hella cool. And I'm going to tell you more about it in a couple of weeks.
Yes. I am stoked.
Don't learn more until I can finish my research and tell you guys about it.
And it's really not your fault that you're all discombobulated. It's probably because of my coughing fit.
That's right.
I almost died. It just threw you off.
And construction, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There's so much happening.
You have all the excuses.
But it's so cool, and I really just got wrapped up in it, and now I want to know everything about it all the time.
Now you need to go home because I have more research to do.
Yeah, excuse me on videos.
No more recovering? Recording.
But I need to recover.
Nope. You're done.
Now I can eat my fast break, though.
True. So, I mean, not on that note, but kind of on that note, I went back in time this week, too. I am not doing construction at my house, but there's a lot going on in my life, and I needed something happy, so I went back to plants. The title of my episode is called Questioning the Narrative on Weeds. So, it's been a while since I had a plant or gardening episode, and some of this I'll touch on stuff that I've talked about before, but since my feral gardening episodes were so long ago, I think it'll be all right. This one starts with a conspiracy theory. I don't know if it's an actual conspiracy theory. It might be my own new conspiracy theory.
I have rubbed off on you so much. I'm so proud.
And I will give a disclaimer that I do understand that some weeds can be an issue. I know there are, weeds that are invasive that have been brought here from other places, and they're like choking out native and natural plants, and that's an issue. I also understand that if you're a farmer or, your money and your life depends on your crops or your garden, why weeds would be an issue. But in general, for most of us, weeds aren't as bad as they've been made out to be. This does start many, many years ago, and it actually starts with snooty England around the time that Bridgerton takes place, which is in the 1800s. And you do see this in Bridgerton. You notice that all of the big fancy estates have expansive green lawns. And this was something to show that it was like a status symbol back then.
Okay.
So having an expansive green lawn showed your neighbors or your town or whoever that, number one, you didn't need all of the land you owned to use for food and animals. You just had extra land laying around that you didn't have a use for. 2, you had extra money to pay for this big, beautiful lawn. 3, you had staff to take care of that lawn. And 4, you had spare time to enjoy this lawn. So think of all the promenading they do in Bridgerton.
Yes.
It was basically just a status symbol to be like, look at all this free land and time I have. Isn't it beautiful? And then, of course, because we started the United States as settlers from Europe, we brought that trend with us when we came to the United States. Some of the reading I did even mentioned that, like, George Washington's first estate and the original White House had great big green lawns. It was kind of like, it was something they even focused on as they were like making these houses, because they had to do a lot of work and they had to, bring certain seeds back from Europe and just really put a lot of time and effort into creating these great, big, beautiful lawns. Years later, when we started experimenting with chemicals, fertilizer was created. I mean, fertilizer has always existed because manure is fertilizer. But eventually we started experimenting with chemicals. We made more chemical fertilizer, which we wanted because we wanted to make crops grow better. But of course we learned that with fertilizer, it doesn't just grow the crops that you're trying to grow. It also grows all those unnoticeable weeds that were probably there this whole time, but now they're giant because we're feeding them fertilizer. And then at the same time, the United States was also using chemicals for chemical warfare. And then when the war ends, they have all this like cool chemical warfare knowledge and all these cool chemicals sitting in these warehouses that they don't have a use for anymore. So they started to do experiments to figure out what doses of these chemicals would kill just plants and bugs instead of humans. And that's how herbicides and pesticides were born.
I love that for us.
Yes, it has turned out so good for us. We love it so much.
Remember how DEET is like so good for you?
Yeah, and DDT. There was like a whole book about it. Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Yeah.
DDP though. Self high five. I'm sorry.
So speaking of marketing, what they did start doing is this is when the big lawn conspiracy comes in. Companies started pointing out all of the things in your grass that you should be killing. So we went from clover is a good example, which you've already mentioned, and we've talked about plenty of times, using clover in your lawn. Clover became known as a weed because the herbicide companies needed to give you a target. So, we have these chemicals, you should use them. Here's what you should use them for. We don't like dandelions, they ruin your yard. So marketing actually gave us these targets on what we want and don't want in our grass. So and then that, I'm going to word it this way even though I disagree with it, that paves the road towards now people that don't own great big estates can start having lawn too, because now these herbicides and these pesticides are commercially available and anybody can buy them. And
so you can look like you have all the money.
Yes, and in a whole, I'm going to call it a marketing plan, even though I'm sure back then it wasn't what they called, advertising or however they were doing it. They marketed as, now regular people can live like rich people and have these lush, beautiful lawns, and they should all look like this, postage stamp of green in front of your suburban house. And it was portrayed as, they didn't know what they don't know. So they made these chemicals. They didn't know at the time the destruction it would cause our environment and our health and what it does to ecosystems when you try to take out entire genealogies of things. But that's how we ended up with big lawns. They wanted poor people or normal people to feel like we could have what the rich people have, and gave us postage stamp lawns that needed to look very pristine and green with no other plants in there. But in defense of weeds, I did a little bit of research on good weeds and bad weeds and weeds that are useful.
And in the middle weeds.
And there are some in the middle weeds. So to start, I wanted to be careful with this because obviously I'm not a doctor. I am not giving medical advice. I am not a herbologist, but do your own research if you want to become the type of person that's using plants and weeds that you find in your yard for any purposes other than them being pretty. So only eat what you are sure of.
And some have to be treated in certain ways before you can.
And if you are using any pesticides, or if your neighbors are using any pesticides or herbicides, make sure you're washing everything. Make sure that you're not ingesting scary chemicals on these. So I'm not going to tell you how to use these plants. I'm just going to go through some that I know I find in my yard, and I assume a lot of other people, especially in this area, find in their yard. The first one is mint. And as a warning, do not plant mint straight into your ground unless you want an entire field of mint. It is actually very invasive and it spreads very easily, but it is exactly what it says it is. You can pull these, you can pull a leaf off this and it will smell like mint. Obviously, we know you could probably put this in a tea, eat, whatever. Again, do your own research. Dandelions, I already talked about a little bit. Dandelion greens go in salad, but pretty much every part of a dandelion is somewhat usable or edible. The roots, the leaves, the flowers.
You can do teas, and you can use them to dye. Not.
Yes, Jessica, I covered that.
Yes. Colors. You
Yes.
can dye things colors.
Yes. The yellow in a dandelion can be used to dye things.
You can use it to dye.
I think people make jelly out of it. There's wine, all kinds of stuff.
Dandelion wine.
Same with violets, which have been attacked by big lawn. We've been led to believe these are weeds that will take over as ground cover and will take out your lawn. They are growing very well into our lawn, and in the spring when the dandelions and the violets are both blooming, my yard is beautiful. I don't know what else you can do with violets, but I know I have a friend that makes them into jam. So you can at least do that. Those are also flowers you can use to dye.
That's their jam.
Evening primrose is another one that you can eat, make tea out of, basically use every part of it. That one, there are some medicinal purposes that I won't get into, but it's supposed to be very beneficial. Burdock, which is it's like a stalk. It's actually wild rhubarb, so it grows as a stalk. It also has the prickly burrs that might come home on your dogs. That is something that can be eaten. It has medical uses. The root can be used. Plantain, which sounds like a banana, but it's not. It actually kind of looks like dandelion leaves when it first grows. But this is something that Native Americans used often and can be used as a tea. It has antiseptic properties, can help with bug bites. White clover, and we know now it makes good ground cover. It can help fertilize the soil. It grows really well. The roots are really close to the ground and they grow sideways, so it can help with erosion and keeping everything where it's supposed to be.
Those can be really helpful plants for people.
Absolutely. If you're having any sort of water issues or erosion issues, that type of plant that kind of grows along the top of the surface can help with that. Tinctures, teas, salves can all be made out of clover. Queen Anne's lace, which belongs in it's in the carrot family.
Really?
So the roots can be eaten just like carrots. Again, please don't try that without researching and making sure that that you have the right plant, because there are a lot of plants that look like Queen Anne's lace that are poisonous.
And they have very subtle differences.
Yes.
So you really do need to.
Yeah. Goldenrod, there's tea, milk thistle. This was a big one when I was breastfeeding. Everybody talked about milk thistle. You can buy it at the store as a herb now, but it's supposed to be good for milk production. But it's another one that pretty much all parts of the plant are edible. They can be cooked. They can be, it can be a spinach substitute.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Stinging nettles, which you have to be careful handling. It can actually cause irritation to your skin, but it is used in teas to help detoxify. It can be soothing for your skin. You can make tea out of it. Yarrow, which looks a lot like Queen Anne's lace, but it's in the sunflower family. There's a lot of medical purposes for that. Chicory, which I believe is usually, it's like a licorice flavor.
Yeah,
and
I was going to say, they use it in candy. It's sweet.
Yes.
Or ish.
Mm-hmm. And it can be used for upset stomach and digestion. I could go on for days. There's a whole list of these. Just type in useful weeds into your Google search, and it's amazing how many things are out there. Again, a lot of this is stuff that has to be prepared a certain way to get the useful things out of it, so please don't just make this up off the top of your head. But there's a lot of great resources out there, a lot of really beneficial weeds that we have been taught are useless, they're ugly, they have to be eradicated, get them out of my lawn, when we could have been doing cool things with them this whole time. Again, watch out for dangerous weeds. I've talked before about foxglove, which can be found in my yard.
And foxglove is gorgeous.
Yes.
So you're probably, if you have it in your yard, you're probably not going to rip it out.
Right.
So.
But it's very, very dangerous.
Oh, another thing to think about too is that some of these may not be dangerous to you, but may be very dangerous to your pets.
Yes, or children that are smaller and not. So foxglove is one to watch out for. Nightshade is the other one. Those are the little black berries that grow on like a tree-like plant. I mean, obviously you've got poison sumac, poison ivy, poison oak, those types of things. You'll want to avoid those. You'll want to avoid other dangerous weeds, giant hogweed, which can cause a lot of irritation and kind of looks like the Queen Anne's lace. Purple loosestrife, which I don't know if it's so much. Yeah, I guess it does say that it's poisonous, but it's also another one that is very, very invasive and can destroy like creek beds and stuff. Pokeweed is poisonous, but as I'll talk about next, it's actually very good for pollinators and bugs. So if you are going to choose to have it, also with foxglove, hummingbirds and butterflies and all of the pollinators love foxglove because it's so pretty. So if you do choose to have those types of more dangerous weeds or plants in your yard, again, make sure that they're in a safe spot where your animals and yourself and your children will not eat them.
Teach your kid not to eat random plants.
Yeah, I mean, don't let them listen to this episode that encourages them to eat plants. Teach them not to eat plants.
They turned it off when I was trying to talk about the terracotta soldiers. Anyway. They're like, this doesn't make any sense.
I thought I had a bigger list on weeds that help feed the pollinators, but really anything that has a flower on it is probably going to help your pollinators. Some big ones are henbit, purple dead nettle, dandelions, violets, clovers, ground ivy, the foxglove. Again, anything with a pretty flower, anything that lightning bugs or other types of useful bugs use as food or to eat. Again, if you're looking for, plants or weeds or useful things, Google it. Make sure you're not introducing invasive species into your yard. A big one, like oriental bittersweet is a big one, honeysuckle, and
I have honeysuckle vines in my yard.
Be careful with them. They can go crazy. They can get very invasive and they can choke other plants out. What was the other one that I just had to remove? Bindweed is not a useful weed for anybody. It can go, get rid of it. So do your research, and if you're not in Michigan especially, do your research to your own area, because it can be very different what is native and natural in Michigan versus what is native and natural in other places. And a lot of plants obviously are not necessarily native anymore. It's stuff that we've brought in for usually decorative purposes throughout the year or landscaping purposes.
Accidentally brought in.
So the internet or the websites will designate whether a plant is invasive or just like introduced, but it doesn't necessarily take over and choke out everything else. I also wanted to talk about, this is something a couple of my friends have been struggling with, especially in more populated areas, are really struggling with deer issues. So, trying to grow tomatoes on your back deck in the middle of the city, you're still getting deer that are jumping fences to eat people's tomatoes. So I have a theory that I would like to try maybe next year, or get one of my friends to try. I looked up 2 different types of weeds that will distract the deer, so weeds that the deer really like, and then weeds and plants that deer don't like. And my thought is, if you had enough room and you planted weeds or plants that deer like kind of on the outskirts of your yard,
maybe keep them away from your house.
Yes, and then closer to where you're going to put your important plants, put some plants that the deer don't like or find distasteful there. So they'd kind of start on the outskirts and eat the good stuff and then go closer and find all the yucky stuff, and maybe it would convince them to move on, maybe. So asparagus, apparently, the deer will eat that. Deer also love ragweed and pokeweed. Raspberry, blackberries, brumbleberries, whatever you got that will grow berries. Goldenrod, clover, honeysuckle are all things deer prefer. So if you planted those kind of on the outskirts of the land, maybe draw them away from what you're doing. And then weeds that deer don't like would be anything that's fuzzy, poisonous, super scented, or tastes bad. So some examples were yarrow, coneflowers, mint, lemon balm, wild columbine, milkweed.
I love columbine.
Foxglove, wild onions or wild garlic gives off a scent, and deer tend to avoid those things.
I saw a TikTok, shock, where people bought a wacky, waving, arm flailing, inflatable tube man that would inflate whenever the deer got really close.
That's a good idea, too. Let's buy Katie one.
Yes.
Because it will bring us all joy.
It will, absolutely.
So that's the other option. Either plant these good plants and bad plants, or buy a wacky, waving, inflatable arm tube guy.
Why not both?
Yes. My final note on plants for today is weeds are beginning to fight back. So the same way bacteria has become resistant to antibiotics throughout these years since we were overusing it and overprescribing it, plants are becoming resistant to herbicides and pesticides. Plants and bugs are becoming resistant to herbicides and pesticides. So we are essentially creating super weeds at this point that are resistant to even some of the more hardcore stuff. Which I think is incredible because nature always finds a way to work around our human intentions.
See, I think that'd be great if, like, the mosquitoes would die.
Fair.
Because really, they're not doing that much for very many people. I know some animals eat them, but we could find something else. We could make more bees and stuff.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah. More bees, less mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm. They can't be that important to the ecosystem.
Right.
Spiders have plenty of other things to eat.
Yeah. Don't eat weeds.
Unless you research them very well.
Don't just listen to us. I mean, I didn't have much to say, really. I told you to get a wacky, waving, arm flailing, inflatable tube man while I drew a fast break on my tablet.
She did a great job, too.
Thanks. I figured I should draw one instead of eating one while I stare into your eyes, which is what I realized I was doing earlier. Well, because I was trying not to crinkle the paper, so I was like... So, I don't know why you still come over to do this.
Because we're 61 episodes in, we can't stop now.
We're stuck here.
Every week I'm like, I don't have time to do this.
Gotta.
Don't care. I will be there.
Let's sign off.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
So I liked that both of our episodes were just a tiny bit discombobulated. Mine maybe slightly more than tiny bit, but we're just gonna pretend it's a tiny bit, and then everybody will be convinced that it made total perfect sense, even though I jumped from place to place. Anyway,
it was great.
I think so. Good job, us.
Good job.
I high-fived myself.
That was beautiful.
You're a little too far away for me to like lean. I don't
like knock the microphone
while I stare in your eyes.
We knock both microphones over. Run into them.
Let's just go home. I'm home, by the way. But whatever.
Nope.
This is Dungeons and Dopamine Podcast.
And you can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and on YouTube.
That's true. We've been getting a lot of followers on YouTube.
Yeah?
It's weird. I don't think they're actually listening. I think they're bots or something.
Yeah, or trying to... What was it? We got an email the other day. It was like, I see you have 17 followers on YouTube. Let me increase your reach.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think we're
You want my credit card.
I don't think you're what we need.
Support us on Patreon. Speaking of credit cards... www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
You can also find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit.
You can. You can reach out to us on any of those, as well as at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com.
Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions. That was good.
Thank you. I really like wound up for that one.
I saw you were like getting ready.
Yeah, I was ready. It's a big deal. Okay, we
All
love
right.
you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.